Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carruth Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 2004 political thriller called Spartan. Now, Spartan is an hour and 46 minutes long. It was distributed by Warner Brothers, and it was written and directed by David Mamet. It is produced by David Bergstein, Art Linson, and Eli Samaha. The score was done by Mark Isham, and the stars of the movie are Val Kilmer, Derek Luke, William H. Macy, Kristin Bell, Texada, and Ed O'Neil. The story of the movie goes like this. Former gunnery sergeant Robert Scott, played by Val Kilmer, who is now serving as a Delta Force cadre member, is training and evaluating Delta candidates. He meets and aligns himself with a rookie trainee by the name of Curtis, played by Derek Luke, and a Sergeant Jacqueline Black, played by Texada, who hopes that Scott keeps them for potentially dangerous initiatives. Scott is assigned a hurried mission in search for the president's daughter, Laura Newton, played by Kristin Bell, who's been missing, and they only have 2 days to search for her before the news starts leaking with reports that she has been missing. She was last seen at Harvard University, where she attends classes. The group starts going to Harvard to question other professors and her boyfriend, and the search leads to a tavern where hookers are recruited, and they follow a middleman who has a bordello and that sells these girls to an international sex slavery ring. Scott and Curtis are led to a beach house as an armed man approaches them, but is shot down by Scott is shot down by Scott and Curtis in self-defense. Calls eventually lead to a Lebanese national in a federal prison named Tariq Assani, as Scott and Curtis stage a robbery to capture Assani during a prisoner transport. To reach Assani, Scott kills the transport guard and the other inmate, but spares Assani as he can get them a plane, and as a token for his gratitude, offers Scott a girl as Scott unravels that this sex slave ring is located as far off as Dubai. Scott stops at a general store where he gathers more ammo, and as Assani opens fire from the parking lot, Scott kills Assani while Curtis is wounded and shot. While on their attempt to find the ring base in Dubai, the news comes on and reports that Miss Newton and one of her professors were assumed dead from drowning while sailing off the coast at Martha's Vineyard. Just as Scott was about to call off the search, Curtis finds evidence that Miss Newton is not dead because he found an earring that belongs to her, identical to the one she's wearing in the picture. When they continue to look for more clues, Curtis is eventually shot by a sniper and is killed, while Scott finds Laura's symbol by a window in the boathouse. That shows that Laura has been there. When Scott tries to get in contact with Laura's mother, he is prevented by a Secret Service agent. He shows her the earring, but the agent explains the president's visits to his daughter was just as a ploy to cover from his promiscuous affairs. The agent demands that Scott should rescue Laura and reveals that her parents actually staged Laura's death because of the fact that they are political animals, and was using this as a distraction of unraveling the truth. The agent offers Scott photos of herself and Laura when she was a child. Scott teams with Sergeant Black to rescue Laura from Dubai. Scott turns over to a private sector who used to be an Israeli operative named Avi, played by Moshe Avgi. Abby, who agrees to rescue Laura in Dubai has weapons and support from an Australian mercenary named Jones. Laura is found and rescued while Jones was killed. Scott and Laura hide out in a safe house and tells her he is acting under orders. One riot, one ranger. He takes Laura to a hideout in his cargo container. Scott discovers that his old team arrives to apprehend him, but Scott is deliberately shot and Laura heads towards the plane. Scott is pursued by Stoddard, played by William H. Macy, who says that Laura should have stayed in the slavery ring and lived, but to keep the reports real, she must now be killed. Laura tries to fight back, but Sergeant Black shows photos to Laura to stop struggling. The Swedish news team arrives on the scenes and watches Sergeant Black getting shot. The reporters safely get Laura onto their plane as Scott, wounded, slashes Stoddard's throat. In London, Scott from a shop window watches the news and reveals that Laura's death was fake and that she has returned to her classes at Harvard, and that Laura's abduction was taken as an opportunity for President Newton to put a stop to the sex trafficking towards American girls. What did I think about this movie? David Mamet exhibits his versatility and dedication to his craft as both a writer and a director through one of the more exciting thrillers in a long time coming. In the movie Spartan, David does everything he could to keep out the characters from being cliched. There's no black characters or Hispanic or Israeli characters speaking in any kind of Ebonics or any kind of broken language or utilizing any type of stereotypes. He refrains from letting that happen, and he never lets the action and the excitement become predictable. He does that by maintaining the plot to keep it moving and to challenge your minds. This movie demands that you need to think at all times. The majority of Spartan is a very plot-driven movie and nothing more, but its weaknesses come at the cost of being poorly done in terms of character development, as not very many characters were well developed as others. But I don't think that should really take its toll to drag your spirits down, which is why instead of giving it a 10, I gave it a 9 because of the lack of character development. And I think I was also a little bit turned off by the fact that many important characters were killed off in the middle of the movie, particularly Derek Luke's character. I mean, they should have kept him on because he was the main contributor as to why the search continued on. I mean, if it wasn't for him finding the earring, the mission would have been called off and Laura Newton would have been dead. This movie demands that you need to think at all times. And, you know, just because it's plot-driven, it doesn't mean it's entirely bad as long as you're quick-witted, and you might enjoy the movie a whole lot better because the complexity of the story lingers on every second. I'm going to refrain from giving too much details about the movie because the twists delivered here are to be seen to be believed. For the record, the story stars, of course, Val Kilmer as a hardliner Secret Service agent who's on the prowl in search of the president's daughter who's been kidnapped. To really get a good feeling about the movie, it is best when it's served cold. And even though the twists delivered here happen quite frequently, it will be enough to make you go bonkers. But it all seems to work out very well, with the story giving a steady flow in its entirety. There's not an ounce of anything boring about the movie Spartan. In fact, I will go out to say that there's really not a lot of action to call it an action movie. It's just a lot of, like city to city jumping from one place to another, from Washington to Harvard University to Wakefield, Massachusetts, around Martha's Vineyard, to Dubai, to London during the last scenes. And it's mostly, like on the run and survival. There's not a lot of body counts, there's not a lot of like heavy action, but the suspense is what really makes this movie count, and it succeeds in keeping it real. However, there's something that happens with each scene and everything falls into place at the right time. Mamet plays it right by avoiding anything like pointless character arcs. We don't really delve too much into character history or overwhelming subplots. The plot, along with the thrills and suspense, is all that Mamet really cares about. The characters depicted here seem to know who they are and their positions of where they're supposed to be as each event unfolds. Sometimes I guess you could say it was a little cheesed off by, maybe lack of character development, as, the only real characters who were on substantially, well, Val Kilmer's character was on quite a lot. And then after that, there's really not too much character development. Derek Luke's had his moments, playing an effective and a great contributor to the movie. Texada, she was on, but she wasn't on very much. Kristin Bell, she's only like during the final hours of the movie, and even her role was very underdeveloped. I was ashamed that Ed O'Neil didn't really have much to do in this movie, even though he was effective, and kind of broke away from the typecasting, lovable TV dad type, like on Married with Children or Modern Family. William H. Macy as the antagonist, well, I just don't understand why he became kind of like a last-second antagonist, coming on near the end. So he was also kind of underdeveloped. That's where the biggest weakness lies. But that's about it. But it's not gonna like affect me that badly. Mamet cranks up the ante by throwing small tidbits of information and just keeps the issues the more compelling. Sometimes, less means more, and Mamet succeeds in doing that. Overall, Spartan is an engaging and involving thriller that should have more credit than it really deserves. I don't think it really did that well in the box office. It's very high in intellect, and there's not one generic scene featured, and one that will challenge the brain, and the thriller here truly defines its genre. It is a classic thriller, and thrillers do not necessarily mean massive body counts or numerous deaths and multiple shootings. The shooting scenes, the death scenes, they all serve a meaning here. It's not just, mindless Guy Ritchie, Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese shootings just for the sake of it. Everything here has meaning to it. The one thing I advise you is not to get turned off by the trailer because it unravels too much of the plot twists. Come in this movie with an open mind. Don't bother looking at the thrillers. Don't just look at the thrillers and say, oh, I saw this in the trailer, and shit like that. Come in with an open mind. Ignore the trailers. Pretend like it never exists, and just sit back and watch the movie, because it is a very involving one. And that's what I meant when I said that this movie is best served cold. If I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would definitely give this an 8.5. It was really that great of a movie. I recommend people to come and see it. Do I recommend children to see it? Not really. It's rated PG-13. There's not a lot of gratuitous violence. And I highly recommend this movie. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to my channel and write back to me. Be polite, be courteous, and I will be back with another review. Until next time, have a good evening, everyone. Goodbye.